have a request from the attorney for Andrew and Dana Stone for an extension of the wetlands special permit.
I move we accept this extension.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we have two requests for adjournment. First one is 2746, 550 and 554 Hill Street.
I move we adjourn those hearings.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we have a request for 2766, Philip and Nina Edwards, 395 First Neck Lane.
I move we adjourn that hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those are both adjourned until April. That brings us up to the next old case, David Koch, 880 Meadow Lane. You can have the envelope, please.
Pass the envelope.
Good evening. I'm Bill Slight. I'm the architect for the applicant.
Could you just go over what you submitted for the work session?
Yes, I will.
Because it's a little confusing because you're showing Shinnecock Road, but the survey of the property doesn't show that this adjoins Shinnecock Road, so we were a little confused about what you submitted.
Shinnecock Road. Could you tell me where do you see the word Shinnecock Road?
On this one, for sure, the smaller one. For the keys.
I see Shinnecock Bay.
Okay, we don't know exactly what it was. One of the things you submitted was,
All right, well,
was that.
8.5 by 11 thing.
It's on this one, right?
On the right side.
Maybe that's not your property. That might be the adjoining property.
what you requested at the work session, you wish to have more information regarding the adjacent property to the east. And
That's the
so
adjacent
And is that the
that-
adjacent property to the east?
that's correct. That's the property.
That's the
That's the Cardinal
that
property.
goes up against Shinnecock Road.
That's correct. So what you have on the
So your
the,
property is the property that's now or formerly Camuto on this survey?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's
All
one
right.
of the things we want to clarify.
So we were able to obtain from the building department, and that's what the photocopy is on the 8.5 by 11 sheet, is the survey of that adjacent property that we received. I also included an image taken from Google Earth, which you may also be able to see the two properties together. The one with the swimming pool is the adjacent property, and the property on the left-hand side is 880 Meadow Lane.
Okay, that's what we wanted, and we
Okay.
just wanted to
Now,
clarify what it was.
I also at the large scale. Here, what we did is we scanned in the image from of the survey that we got from the building department, and we married that with our survey, and then on it we superimposed dimensions, and we were able to do that by using the scale that we have. And what it does show is that the nearest structure on the adjacent property is 88.9 feet from the property line, closest to in the area closest to where we are making the very small encroachment, 3.5 feet into the side yard setback. And I believe that is the information that you were most interested in, is just what were the proximities in that area. I might also point out on the large-scale drawing, we circled it in red. There's a very small little shaded area that shows exactly what that triangular encroachment is. And you can see that its size in relation to the properties gives you a relative idea of how much.
Very small.
That's correct.
See the red on the big?
Yeah.
Anybody got any questions? Right? Check. Anybody out in the audience? Let's go ahead to this application.
Wanna do it?
Yeah.
Possession hearings on TV.
Based upon the plans submitted by applicant's architect showing the minimal nature of the proposed encroachment into the easterly side yard, comma, and based upon the information submitted regarding the adjoining parcel to the east, comma, we find that the requested variance will not have a detrimental impact on the adjoining parcel to the east, and that in view of the minimal nature of the deck extension, we find that the requested variance is warranted, period. Therefore, we grant a side yard variance to 27 feet from the easterly side lot line in order to permit the proposed deck extension.
I move we accept this project as proposed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your time and attention.
Next application is 2769 Southampton Hospital, 240 Meeting House Lane.
Good evening, Wayne Bruin, O'Shea, Marcinson and Bruin for the applicant, Southampton Hospital Association. At the last meeting, two things I think were left for the board to address. One was to have Mr. Voorhees review the environmental assessment forms that we submitted and to have us back to address any questions that may come up. My understanding is he may have some questions regarding the submission. Second thing, which I think was requested at the end of the meeting, related to existing certificates of occupancy for the premises and what outstanding permits may be existing, was requested. In regard to the latter, we did immediately go to the building department and requested files, and what we found is sort of a paperwork nightmare. What we were able to first ascertain was a property record card, if you're familiar with the building department, a property record card, and identified numerous permits dating all the way back to the 50s for the hospital property. And the purpose of that property record card was to show not only the permits that were applied for, it was also to show not only building permits, but planning and zoning records, previous planning board decisions, zoning board decisions as well. And we requested copies. The building department immediately responded, gave us 6 certificates of occupancy, probably the most recent ones, and thereafter started going back and looking for files, identifying files, and compiling a list of those which may or may not have certificates of occupancy that were identified. I have a letter that just sort of summarizes what we went through, but as of this moment, we don't have a complete list, and I think This actually is a good exercise, at least from my perspective, and I've advised the hospital that it's probably time to clean up all these records and figure out what has permits, what were closed as far as COs, going all the way back to the 50s, and make sure that we clean it all up so that there's no open permits at some point, that we can have that all resolved. So at the moment, I cannot give you a complete list because the building department is still searching the records, but I can give you what we have to date. With respect to some of the recent permits, which I mentioned at the end, the hospital has made some progress with that respect. They've hired a renowned fire safety and engineering firm to review the existing situation at the hospital, interface with the fire marshal, and advise the hospital all their options. The problem we had in the past was, among the options, not only were they costly, but some required, if that was to be acceptable, which seemed to be a possibility with the fire marshal, all would have required some sort of variance from the state, which council mentioned before. The problem when you go to the state is you got to clearly identify the exact sections that you're dealing with and then what the relief is. So this consultant, I have a lot of hope that the hospital will be able to get that done within the next month or two. But I'd just like to, I'll submit this for the record. I understand, in another regard, the plans that we had submitted here were conceptual. And since that time, the engineers at the Rayner Group have been working towards more detailed site plans. In fact, this past last week, submitted a very detailed site plan now dealing with the exterior and the parking areas. I have a copy here. I can leave it for the record if you so desire. It's very large, 5 sheets. This has been submitted to the planning board formally. Copies have been also submitted to Nelson Pope and Voorhees, both electronically and otherwise. For the first time, though, tonight, when I looked at this, I noticed one of the things the engineer did, without my knowledge, until I looked at this, was actually relocate the 2 proposed generators to an area which I think will actually be a little better. And interestingly, on the overall site plan, they don't show them at all, but on the detail part, they show them actually in this location, which is in the maintenance loading, unloading area in this location. And Chick actually has the plan. This was the plan that was submitted to you. And you can see this is where they were locating them, in this grass area on the other side of the parking area of the Schenck building. They proposed to relocate them in this maintenance area over here.
Where they have the loading dock?
I think it's in that vicinity. I think the actual loading dock is right here.
Okay.
And this is over in an area where it has electronic, the electric utility boxes and everything, and actually in some way that was, the proximity to that was important.
The new area they want to move them to is, what's the use of that area right now?
It's a paved area, and I think that's where some of their security, it's employee paved parking areas. So, like I said, this is the first time that I see them relocated, and we'll have to address those.
But there, that'll lose some parking spaces where the other one didn't?
Well, this didn't. This was in a lawn area.
Right.
But we did, this whole site plan reconfigures parking, and there's no loss of parking. We added the parking on the property otherwise. So there's no loss of parking, but I'll have the engineer review that. I understand Mr. Voorhees has some questions about this, and it's his expectation to sort of look at this in more detail, both with the planning board and this board from a seeker standpoint. But we can leave that for Chicks.
This is pending before the planning board, and it was referred to the zoning board of appeals to get the relief because of the percent coverage before the planning board reviewed it in detail. So we received an environmental assessment form, and if there are more than one agency involved, depending on the classification of the action, you would do a coordinated review. And the only agencies that I'm aware of that are involved are the planning board and the ZBA. So I think that because we're kind of starting here and they need the relief to go back to the zoning board, it's prudent for this, planning board, I'm sorry, prudent for this board to initiate a coordinated review, assume lead agency, and take care of the seeker aspects of the project. If it was an unlisted action, you could issue a negative declaration, kick it back to the planning board, and they would do their own determination, or you'd have the option of coordinating it. In this case, when we looked at this in more detail, there's a village historic district, but there's also a National Register historic district. And when you consult the maps, the National Historic District comes to about this location. So we did a little further research, and if there's an action that is substantially contiguous to a National Historic District or any historic district, it becomes a type 1 action. In the seeker handbook, it outlines some of the parameters, and if it was across a major highway, it wouldn't be substantially contiguous. But if it's across a minor village street such as this, it would be. It's considered to be substantially contiguous based on the guidance. So we do feel it's a type 1 action. The zoning board could conduct a coordinated review. If the planning board is in agreement with the zoning board assuming lead agency, you would issue a seeker determination here, and the planning board could then act. That's kind of complicated. We don't really deal with seeker that often here at this level, but that's kind of an overview of an explanation. We did review the Part 1 environmental assessment form, which is used for coordination purposes. Just had a couple of questions. Many of the things are minor, things like, you know, the depth to bedrock was not listed. But the two key items that we saw were, number one, that we should identify the historic district across the street, and number two, there were some discrepancies on the generator information and how they may combine to generate noise levels and how that's effectively mitigated. So that's all outlined in a memo. I did have it prepared for the work session, and I think some of you received it, but I don't think everyone did. So I have another copy. Rick, you have it, I believe.
Is it the same as the?
Exactly the same.
Okay.
Do we have information of what kind of fuel these generators are working off? Are they diesel?
I thought they were propane, but maybe Lynn could.
And, you know, I guess like exhaust, you know, where does the exhaust go through? And where are the generators now that they have? Are they just old and?
They're old and undersized, and scattered, from what I understand, different spots around. I asked Vinnie Gaudiello of the Rayner Group was going to identify those for everyone. I mean, I
So
think the
they're
planning
not
board
only,
wanted.
so I mean, they're gonna get rid of generators now.
Correct.
So I guess it would be
There may
nice
be
to
no
know
net
what-
increase.
I know,
or
but
it
it'd be
may
nice to know where they are and what's gonna happen with that area that they go away from, you know? If there are several of them on the property, are they oil tanks? Are they all propane? Are they, you know, are they on concrete pads? What gets cleaned up with that, I guess, you know?
We can get you that information.
That makes sense. So what I would propose, I mean, I will say that I don't see any major environmental issues from the standpoint of anything rising to the level of an environmental impact statement, because that's really what this seeker review determines. Is it a negative declaration, no significant adverse environmental impact? That's what we have to determine. I don't see anything major here as long as some of these issues are addressed. I certainly don't see anything that rises to the level of an EIS. So with the zoning board's permission, what I suggested was when we receive an adequate Part 1 EAF back from the applicant, administratively, I can prepare a letter on behalf of the zoning board over to the planning board, get them to determine if they want to be lead agency or not. We can kind of coordinate that because we do consulting for both boards. And, you know, once they indicate that it's fine for the zoning board to become lead agency, we can proceed to prepare a determination and have that ready as soon as it's reasonably
I guess, you know, my question was on diesel, because diesel, there's a whole diesel fuel issue of, do you do a buried tank? Do you have to do a tank that's surrounded in concrete? That could be an environmental issue,
yes.
so.
So that's what we've asked for tonight.
Yeah,
to,
why
have
wouldn't you
some
just use
clarification.
street gas if you're gonna change over?
Street gas is better.
Which is
Diesel
what you want.
generators are cheaper.
Right, no, it's
No.
also a more continuous supply, you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Wouldn't we all like that
Hopefully.
after some of the storm events?
Once you go over 100 kilowatts, natural gas becomes very inefficient at generating electricity.
That's why I was wondering if they were diesel, yeah.
Okay. Well, we can either add that, or just, I think it's part of the record tonight to have that part of the request.
And if the old ones were diesel, do they have tanks, and where are those? And
They have
you
to be
know,
removed.
there's a big problem with old oil tanks and even new oil tanks about they don't like to bury them in ground anymore. That's just on the residential side. So on the commercial side, I'd like to,
Find that out.
yeah.
Procedurally, I believe this is on the planning board agenda for Monday. I'm just wondering how fast, I mean, I can attempt to have information submitted by Monday's meeting at the planning board. I'm just wondering if you'll be able to guide the planning board such procedurally as well.
Effectively, 2 workdays between now and then, so the ball's in your court. I did need to get one copy of the memo back if the board is in agreement for the applicant. I didn't bring enough copies.
What memo?
Oh, shit, he wants his own memo back.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Just to give to the,
There you go. Got it?
and I did email it before the work session, so some of you may have
Thank you.
it already in your file.
The computer, I can't download it.
So, I guess one question, do you want this for your file?
Well, that shows where that
I'm
generator.
assuming,
That's the next thing.
I'm assuming,
Unless you want to get us some smaller ones for next month.
yeah, that's what I'll try to do, is get something that's smaller. I'll also,
May want to update this. I mean, this was a nice,
yeah,
Yeah, that size
it
is
showed
good.
it very,
Yeah,
just update
so
that.
we'll just get the site plan for you. You don't need all the other details that the planning board does. I just thought if you needed this, we can get this.
Okay, there's really nothing, because of the secret procedure that we'll need to follow based on Chick's recommendations, there's nothing further that we can do in a formal way until after the revised EAF is submitted and the planning board either agrees that you guys can be the lead agency or asserts that they want to be. If they agree that you can be, then at that point, we can proceed with the secret review. If they say they want to be the lead agency, then it'll have to be worked out between the 2 boards.
Can we just pause for a second on that question? I'm just wondering is, if they did, would you object to that? We might send them a message if they wanted to be lead agency and review all these details, or if this board wanted to do it. But I guess if you had no objection to that, then we could proceed with them.
The seeker law intends that the board with the broadest review power assume lead agency. You know, some boards do it routinely. The planning board, I think, more often assumes lead agency for unlisted actions and issues determinations. Well, we've done it here as well. So it's really up to, it's up to you.
Seems to me the issues are, you know, if, Chick could correct me if I'm wrong, but the issue for you is solely the lot coverage variance and the environmental, how the parking layout and the like, and how it's all constructed, and perhaps the environmental impact is really a site plan related. Some of the questions you had asked, I believe, are all site plan questions, so I don't know if that's something the planning board normally would deal with as opposed to this board, but
Sounds like
they'd like to do it. No?
Well, that's the purpose of the coordinated review.
They'd
It's
like to
usually-
do it, I have no objection.
I mean, sometimes it
Anybody else?
happens between agencies.
What does Rick think?
I don't, you know, if your preference is that the planning board do the secret review, I don't have a problem with that. That's one less thing that you guys have to do.
That's my preference.
I'm just
Wayne,
thinking
did you
is
file?
if we could express to the planning board that you have no objection if they desire
No
to do it,
objection
but
if
if
they
they
do it. If they
decide
wanna
that they're
do it,
not
then
gonna do
we'll do
it,
it.
then you'll do it. Then, okay.
But if they'd like to do it, to have them go right ahead and do it.
That sounds like a coordinated review to me.
Yes. Just coordinated that.
Did you submit an EAF to the planning board also?
No, I don't believe they have, but we're gonna revise it
update
anyway to
this.
get, we need to get all the
Same question
information you
would
requested
apply.
anyway, so.
Well, that's fine, so there's really no further action.
And in the meantime, while the
The hole
planning...
is open, right?
Yeah, I have to hold it open while the planning board is doing their secret review. If they accept lead agency, then Wayne can be working on
We could probably have more
all of the stuff
information on
that
the
you
other
guys,
matters.
asked for, including, all the open issues with the building department.
Just a quick point, because it's a type 1 action, this board can't act until the planning board completes secret and issues a determination.
Okay.
So, we wait.
Do we have anything else from the board or from Rick or from Chip? About
Not in
the
this
audience? No one in the audience.
Come on.
Therefore, we're going to hold this open for all purposes.
Yep.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Great holiday.
Okay. On the application of case number 2770, the Heller Family Trust, 1532 Meadow Lane.
I am here to possibly make your night even easier. My name is Brant Reiner. I'm from InterScience Research Associates. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Heller Family 1996 Trust. Also here on behalf of my associate, Jim Walker, who is the lead on this project. He is unavailable to make it tonight, and he has asked me to deliver the affidavits and the certified mailings, which I believe are all in order, and ask the board to open the hearing to allow any public comments or any comments that the board's environmental consultant wants to make, and to just keep the hearing open till April, at which time Jim will be able to present the project to the board. So if the board would like, I can read this letter very quickly. Jim just asked that, enclosed, please find the affidavits of posting and the affidavits of mailing, along with certified mail return receipts. Since I'm out of town, please open the hearing and hold it over for all purposes until the next meeting. Since the affidavits have been provided, any neighbors who may want to comment on the application can do so at the scheduled hearing. I will present the project at your April meeting. Should there be any questions, please feel free to contact our office. So if the board wouldn't mind, seeing as there's no public tonight, we just ask that you keep it open until April so Jim can come present to you.
Okay.
Chick, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. First of all, I'm sure Jim will explain this in more detail. It looks like, to me, it's a driveway screening, because I'm familiar with this property, and they basically have a driveway that traverses the property that doesn't serve their house. There are several areas of wetlands on the property, and there's also invasive species in those areas. And it appears as though this involves driveway screening, creation of a berm along Meadow Lane, and some replanting, which is generally good. I do want to review this in a little more detail, and it's always good to hear Jim's input. But Brant, you might just, I wanted to check, we have the design narrative,
Okay.
which seems to be complete. And I want to make sure that that is consistent with the planting list on the plan. Because most often we look at the plan and that becomes part of the actual record and it's referenced in any wetland special permit. So I didn't see the planting list for the items IF and BH, which are shown on the plan but don't appear in the planting list. Looking at the narrative, IF is marsh elder and BH is groundsel. And those are certainly, good wetland and transition area plants. So let's just make that consistent, and that's something that could be done, so that you're ahead of the game when Jim comes to the next meeting.
Okay.
Also, usually when we get this type of plan, we get some idea of the number of plants that are gonna be in these zones. So in some cases, it looks to me as though it's 3 individual plants in staggered rows along the driveway. But these other polygons, I think it would be good to just have some idea how many plants are expected. Now, I don't know if those are just plug areas. I haven't looked at it in that great detail.
Sorry, Chick, where are you speaking?
We have clusters of plants, which I
Yeah.
believe are individual plants.
Correct.
And then there are polygons
Yep.
where the number of plants is not specified. And so usually we want to know what the planting plan entails and what the spacing is. and
Spacing,
how many
quantity.
species are going to be involved.
Okay.
And it is it's a sensitive wetland area. There is some restoration and removal of invasives, so I think that detail is warranted on this plan. The concept is good. And I also noticed that there's mile-a-minute weed listed in the InterScience
Sounds bad.
inventory of existing species, and that's a real problem, invasive species. So the sooner that can be controlled, the
Grows
better.
fast, I guess.
Yep.
Goes very fast.
Mile a minute?
Mile-a-minute weed. You guessed it.
It is nasty.
Rob is
It's growing
right
right now.
on the ball.
Sit here, it's already grown 3 miles.
That's on the forefront of the plan. That mile a minute needs to come out right away.
Yeah, well, it's, you have a good narrative on how you're going to approach that.
Right.
So we'll review this in a little more detail. You can make those consistency corrections, and we'll hear from Jim at the next meeting.
Is there something in particular you wanted to comment regarding the mile a minute weed?
No,
that
no, it's just an
that it-
observation for the
okay.
board that
Okay.
I knew they'd be very concerned about that.
Sounds bad.
It is bad.
Okay.
So we'll hold this one open for all purposes.
So moved.
Appreciate it.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting of the
Very
Southampton
efficient meeting.
Yeah.
Zoning Board of Appeals is adjourned.
Adjourned.